The Dershow.
Imagine Donald Trump, the great negotiator, having a negotiation and saying, well, I'll tell you what, I'll just give you everything you want and you don't have to give me anything. It would never happen. But that's what Macron has basically introduced. And his craven attempt to placate the mobs in France. And his domestic constituency has now been copied by Great Britain, by Canada, by Australia, and probably by New Zealand. They are going to have blood on their hands because as the result of their unilateral recognition without demanding anything in return, without demanding the release of the hostages, will mean that Hamas is not going to deal. It's not going to release the hostages. And some may die. And these countries will have blood on their hands. And they're going to increase the tensions in the Middle East. They're not going to decrease them. They're going to have virtue posturing. And look at us, we recognize a Palestinian state. Big deal. And they'll speak about a Palestinian state from the same podium at the UN, from which a resolution was enacted 40 years ago. I forget the exact date, equating Zionism with racism. Zionism is the least racist political view imaginable. Israel is a multicultural, multiracial state. It has, black people in positions of great authority, Arab Muslims in positions of great authority. Zionism is not racism. And a couple of years later, they rescinded the resolution. But it's the same podium from which Ahmadinejad denied the Holocaust, from which Yasser Arafat wielded a gun when he spoke at the United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly has become the Der Stürmer, the Nazi propaganda rag of modern times. It was Abiy Ibn who once said that if Algeria introduced a resolution to the General Assembly of the UN saying that the earth is flat and that Israel had flattened it, it would win 126 to 12 with 32 abstentions. And he could name the states that would vote for it. Against it would be Israel and the United States and a couple of islands in the Pacific. Abstentions would be the courageous states of France and England and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and the rest of the world would vote that the world was flat if Algeria introduced the resolution, or if the Palestinians introduced the resolution. So don't expect justice or honesty or truth from the UN any more than you expect it from the New York Times and from CNN. It's not going to happen. And so, my visit to Israel it's just reinforced my views. Maybe I'll change some of my views. If I get to Gaza, maybe there'll be some opportunity to interact and to change views. But I interact with Palestinian people all the time. I've had dinner, just four of us, with Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority. I've had dinner with the former prime minister of the Palestinian Authority. I've had dinner with Saeb Erekat, the spokesman for the Palestinian Authority, and many other people. So, I speak to people like that. I'm better than the pierogi guy on the vineyard who won't sell me pierogies because I'm a Zionist. I'm a Zionist, but I speak to non-Zionists. Unlike, again, some people on Martha's Vineyard who won't speak to me because I'm a Zionist. I believe in dialogue. I believe in speaking to anybody. I've represented Nazis and communists. I've represented Palestinians who wanted to honor Yasser Arafat. Free speech to me is crucially important, and I'm going to continue to defend free speech, and people will criticize me for it. But that's what the Constitution demands, and that's what I love about America. Its Constitution, its system of checks and balances, its separation of powers. That's what makes America the greatest country in the world. And Israel is very, very similar. It doesn't have a written constitution, but it has the best civil liberties record, of course, of any country in the Middle East, and one of the best civil liberties and human rights records of any country in the world. It also, and this is going to surprise people, has the best record, not the second best, the best record of killing fewest civilians compared to combatants of any country in the modern history of warfare. That's right. The ratio of combatants to non-combatants that are killed is better in Israel than it is in the United States, than it is in NATO, than it is in Britain, than it is in France, than it is in Canada than it is in any country that's fought comparable wars, such as the wars we fought in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. In Israel, the ratio at worst is 2.5 to 1, less than 3, even by Hamas figures, civilians to every combatant killed. The usual ratio is 7 to 1. Sometimes it's 10 or 12 to 1. At Hiroshima, it was 1,000 to 1. At Dresden, it was hundreds to 1. In Tokyo, it was thousands to 1. And in other wars as well. So Israel has the best record of any country in the world of minimizing civilian deaths, despite the fact that Hamas hides its terrorists among civilians and doesn't allow its civilians to use its tunnels. Tunnels are the best possible shelters, and they reserve those shelters only for terrorist fighters. They will not allow a baby into the shelter. They will not allow a woman into the shelter. So don't blame Israel. When you see dead babies and you see dead women, that's Hamas's fault. And that's the New York Times' fault for not telling that story, for putting on the front page of the New York Times a faked picture of a child who tragically has a serious illness and trying to persuade the world that Israel is starving him. It's a blood libel. It's defamation. And I wish there were a way of bringing a lawsuit against the New York Times for defamation. Under American law. Unfortunately, a country doesn't have standing to sue a journal. In some countries they do, and maybe there'll be a way to find some countries in the world that would have an opportunity to bring a lawsuit for defamation against the New York Times and against other people who have defamed.